Walk slowly. Breathe deeply. Live fully. Daniel was once a man of precision, a celebrated surgeon in a bustling city hospital. He lived by the ticking of the clock, each second optimized for efficiency, each minute monetized into success. He spoke little, smiled less, and worked more than any of his peers. Patients saw him as a savior. Colleagues saw him as a machine. He saw himself as invincible. Every day Daniel walked with his chin high and his pace faster than anyone else in the hospital corridor. He didn't believe in luck or karma, only skill and speed. "Time waits for no one," he'd say usually to a young intern trying to keep up with his stride. Life to Daniel was a ladder. Every second wasted was a step missed, but the day everything shattered began like any other. It was a stormy Tuesday morning. Daniel had just finished an overnight shift when a little girl was rushed into the emergency room, barely 6 years old, suffering from a severe internal rupture due to a car accident. Her name was Lily. Her mother, soaked from the rain and trembling, held her daughter's tiny hand with desperation in her eyes. She looked up at Daniel as though he were a god. "Please, save her," she whispered. Daniel barely nodded. He had done this kind of surgery dozens of times. He didn't ask about her allergies. He didn't pause to check her full chart. He wanted to finish quickly, go home, get some sleep. "It's routine," he told himself. "A standard abdominal repair." But halfway through, Lily's heart stopped. By the time they revived her, the damage was irreversible. Daniel had missed something crucial, something that would have been clear if he had taken just one more minute. Lily didn't survive. That night, Daniel stared at his hands in the dim light of his office. Hands that once healed now trembled with an unfamiliar emotion. Not guilt, at least not yet. It was disbelief. He hadn't made a mistake like this. Not him. The hospital launched an investigation. The press got involved. Lily's mother filed a lawsuit. It didn't take long for Daniel's world to collapse. He lost his license. His name, once printed on plaques and articles, now appeared in headlines soaked in blame. His reputation, his income, his carefully built empire, gone. But what hurt more than the court's verdict was the silence that followed. Friends disappeared. Former colleagues avoided eye contact. He was alone. For the first time in decades, Daniel had nothing to run toward, and nothing to run from. So he wondered. Weeks turned into months. Daniel drifted from city to city, avoiding places where people might recognize him. He slept in cheap motels, ate what he could afford. One morning, after a night spent sitting on a park bench under an old tree, he heard the sound of chanting from afar. It was gentle, rhythmic, like breath. He followed it. It led him to a quiet Buddhist monastery nestled on the edge of a forest. He stood at the gate, ragged and uncertain. A monk opened the door and simply said, "You've come a long way." Daniel didn't ask for anything. He just nodded. The monks didn't ask questions either. They gave him a room no larger than a closet, 2 sets of robes, and a bowl. His first job, wash the latrines. Then carry water up the hill. Then sweep the leaves, day after day. There were no beeping machines, no clocks. Just the sound of wind in the trees and the breath of people who moved with purpose, not speed. At first, Daniel hated it. He would catch himself rushing to finish chores as if there were a schedule to keep. He walked fast. He spoke fast. His heart beat fast. One day, an old monk named Master Tenzin approached him. "You walk as though you're late for life," the monk said. Daniel chuckled dryly. "Isn't everyone?" Master Tenzin shook his head slowly. "When you walk too fast, you miss the ground under your feet. When you breathe too shallow, you miss the air that keeps you alive. And when you live without pause, you miss life entirely." Daniel didn't respond. But that night he couldn't sleep. Those words echoed in his mind like footsteps in an empty hallway. He started observing the way the monks breathed, slow, intentional, the way they bowed to the earth before each meal, the way they treated each act, no matter how small, as sacred. Daniel began to walk slower. He watched the sky change colors at dawn. He felt the warmth of the sun on his face, something he hadn't truly felt in years. He noticed the sensation of cold water running over his hands as he washed dishes, and the sound of raindrops tapping against the roof of the temple like a lullaby. One afternoon, as he was collecting fallen leaves near the meditation hall, a young boy ran by and tripped in front of him. Without thinking, Daniel reached out and caught him. The boy looked up and smiled. "Thank you, Uncle." That smile broke something open in Daniel. Something soft. Something human. He sat by the koi pond that evening and cried for the first time since Lily died, not out of guilt, but because he finally felt it, the weight of his choices, the cost of his haste. He had always believed he was saving lives by working fast. But in the end, his greatest mistake came from moving too quickly, from not breathing deeply, from never pausing to feel what truly mattered. Daniel had finally stopped running, and in that stillness, something began to heal. The monastery never asked Daniel to confess. No one cared about his past. Yet, it was that quiet acceptance that made the guilt heavier. Each morning, Daniel woke before dawn. The air in the mountains was crisp and clear, and for the first time in years, he didn't start his day by checking a schedule. He simply listened to birdsong, to the wind weaving through the prayer flags, to the steady beat of his own heart. It was in this space of stillness that Daniel began to change. At first, he resisted. He kept his distance from others. He was the only Westerner among the monks, and though they treated him kindly, he couldn't forgive himself. He avoided mirrors. He didn't speak unless spoken to. But the monks never pushed. They simply lived as examples, present, joyful, humble. One day, after a long afternoon of hauling firewood, Daniel found himself sitting beside a koi pond at the far end of the monastery grounds. The sky was soft with fading sunlight. The surface of the water mirrored it perfectly. A thought came to him, not loud, but persistent. You are not your mistake. He didn't know where it came from. Maybe from something Master Tenzin had once said, maybe from within. But for the first time, he didn't push the thought away. That night, during evening tea, a new face appeared in the temple. A woman in grey robes. Her presence was quiet but powerful. She walked with grace, and when she sat among the monks, there was a silence that followed, as if even the wind wanted to listen. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. He knew her. It was Lily's mother. The last time he had seen her, her eyes were wild with pain, and her voice cracked from pleading. Now she was still. A calm lake, a candle burning without wind. They did not speak that night, nor the next. But days later, Daniel found himself sweeping the courtyard when she approached. "Do you remember me?" she asked gently. He nodded. There were no words. She didn't cry, didn't accuse. Her eyes held no rage, just something deeper, perhaps compassion, perhaps something he didn't deserve. "I came here after Lily passed," she said softly. "I had nowhere else to go. I hated you. I hated God. I hated life, until I realized I was burning myself from the inside." Daniel felt the earth tilt beneath him. His throat tightened. She continued, "A monk here told me, pain is real, suffering is choice. I didn't understand it then, but slowly I began to see. The day Lily died, something in me broke, but also opened. That pain pushed me into the Dharma, and in Dharma I found peace." Daniel couldn't bear to meet her eyes. "You found peace from that?" She smiled, not with joy, but with understanding. Lily's life had meaning, even if it was short. Her death, it wasn't the end. Maybe, in some strange way, she helped save you too. That broke him. Daniel dropped to his knees. His hands trembled as they reached toward hers, but she stepped back gently. "I forgave you long ago," she said. "Not for you, for me. I had to let go of the fire, or it would consume me." Silence fell. In that moment, Daniel realized that forgiveness was not about erasing the past. It was about releasing the chain that tied him to it. And the one who held that chain was himself. For the next few weeks, Daniel and the woman, now known as Sister Mira, shared little more than nods and quiet smiles. But something had shifted. His steps felt lighter, his breathing deeper. It was as though her forgiveness had unlocked something he had long buried. One evening, during walking meditation, Master Tenzin joined Daniel as they strolled the path lined with lanterns. "She told me she forgave me," Daniel whispered. "And do you believe her?" the Master asked. "I want to," Daniel replied. "But how do I forgive myself?" The old monk paused, then pointed to a tree. "Do you see that pine?" Daniel nodded. "It once stood beside another," the monk said. "A great storm came and tore the other down. This one remained, but its roots were tangled with the one that fell. For a while it leaned, struggled, but over time it straightened again, not because it forgot the other, but because it chose to keep growing. Daniel looked at the tree for a long time. "You cannot change what was," Tenzin said, "but you can choose what will be." That night, Daniel sat in the meditation hall alone. A single candle flickered in front of him. He closed his eyes and breathed, not to escape, not to numb, but to feel. The pain was still there, but now it sat beside him, not inside him. Do you believe everything happens for a reason? Is forgiveness something that must be earned? Or is it a gift we give ourselves? These were questions Daniel once dismissed. Now they haunted him, yet held him up like koans, waiting to be lived, not solved. And as he lit incense before the altar of the Buddha that evening, he whispered, for the first time, not a prayer, not a plea, but a thank you, to Lily, to Mira, to the stillness that had saved him, to life, even in its quietest, most painful form. Years passed quietly. The seasons changed around the monastery like breath, soft, constant, unseen, but deeply felt. Trees aged, stones wore smooth under countless footsteps, and Daniel, once a surgeon who moved faster than the clock, had become part of the rhythm. He no longer kept track of time. He lived by the sun, the silence, and the steady cadence of his own breathing. Each morning Daniel woke before dawn, not out of duty, but from the gentle joy of witnessing the world awaken. He made tea for the elders, taught young orphans who came to the temple how to write their names. Sometimes they asked him stories about the world below. Did you live in a big house? Were you rich? Were you important? Daniel always smiled gently. I lived too fast. I forgot how to live at all. The children would laugh, not fully understanding. But over time, they came to know him as the quiet man who never raised his voice, who listened deeply, and who once cried with a child after her bird died, that Daniel, the one who listened, who cared, who knelt to tie a child's broken sandal, was a far cry from the man who had once rushed past nurses in city corridors, barking orders, too busy to notice the weight of life. But even peace has its moments of echo. One morning, while sweeping the courtyard, Daniel found a letter placed beneath the stone Buddha by the gate. It was written in a delicate hand. He unfolded it. Dear Daniel, I've been diagnosed with cancer. It's advanced, I don't have long. But don't be sad. This life has been full of many things, and I want you to know something. I truly believe Lily gave both of us a second chance. I was angry at the world until I learned to breathe with it. You, Daniel, taught me that forgiveness is not weakness. It is wisdom. Live well, brother. Sister Mira. His hands trembled. He folded the letter back in silence. The sun rose slowly behind the temple roof, painting the sky in peach and gold. That day, Daniel taught his students to meditate, not with words but by sitting beside them. He placed a flower in front of them and asked, Can you breathe for someone you've loved and lost? They tried. One child asked, "What if I cry?" He smiled. "That means you're doing it right." From that day forward, Daniel began writing again. Not reports, not prescriptions, but letters of love, of mistakes, of breath. He placed them in a wooden box near the entrance of the meditation hall. Anyone could read them. Many did. A few wept. Some left their own letters behind. The monks called it the box of living truths. Years blurred like watercolor in rain. The Daniel of the city, the surgeon, the perfectionist, the one who feared silence, was now a memory folded into compassion. One winter morning, the monastery found Daniel seated beneath the Bodhi tree, legs crossed, hands resting gently in his lap. His eyes were closed, his face was still. He had passed away in meditation. There was no struggle, no pain, just stillness, just breath. His final one. When they lit incense for him, Master Tenzin read aloud one of Daniel's final writings. "We think redemption is a moment, a lightning bolt, a revelation. But it's not. Redemption is a slow walk, one breath at a time, one apology, one act of service. We don't become pure. We become human, fully, finally." Daniel was cremated. His ashes were scattered beside the koi pond where he had once cried his first tear of truth. The same place Lily's mother had forgiven him, where the boy had called him uncle. He had returned, at last, to peace. Final reflection. For narration or closing video segment, you may wonder, did Daniel deserve peace? Some would say no. Others would argue that he earned it, moment by moment, through humility, sorrow, and service. But here lies the paradox of karma and compassion. We are not the worst thing we've done, nor are we the highest title we've ever held. We are what we choose to become after the fall. So ask yourself, is forgiveness only for the innocent? Or is it the path for the broken to become whole? Do you believe someone like Daniel can truly be redeemed? Or are some mistakes too heavy to release? Would you have forgiven him if it were your child? Leave your thoughts below. Your truth might help someone else walk a little slower, breathe a little deeper, and live a little fuller.